Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 13th informational meeting. The first item on our agenda is the City Council staff report from Deborah Owen, our City Clerk.
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a quick update. As many of you know, the 3 council members attended the Municipal League conference, the statewide conference in Watertown this last week. And we attended a number of different workshops and general sessions. There were some social events as well, and I did send you a brief email on that and a great little photo of some of the council who were there. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone here from Mayor Munson's office to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Audit Committee, no report. Fiscal Committee, there was no meeting last week, so there's no report there. Land Use Committee.
No report.
Public Service Committee.
We are meeting right after this meeting, and we'll be talking about affordable housing, code enforcement, and we have noise ordinance as a pending issue for December, but we will have a brief discussion on the noise ordinance as well from downtown Sioux Falls.
Okay. That was City Council open discussion. Any items for discussion? Councilor Staggers?
Yes. On October 3rd, I had a column published in the Artist Leader. And in the article, I put forth the idea that the City Council is operating in an artificial world. Now, the response to that article, we have many people responding positively to that article. However, there were some people, naturally, that disagreed with that article. Part of this disagreement was reflected in an article published yesterday, an article written by Pat Costello. He disagreed with my analysis that the City Council is living in an artificial world, which that's perfectly okay. But Pat went beyond that and engaged in personal attacks. I've served for 15 years as an elected official. I've served 8 years in the state Senate, and never have I ever had personal attacks like this. And also 7 years on the City Council with no personal attacks like that until now. My only question for Pat is, did you really write that article?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Any other topics for City Council open discussion?
We had the meeting with the Downtown Association, or there was a meeting with the Downtown Association about the sidewalk ordinance, and part of the discussion included the noise ordinance. And I show that that's a pending issue with the public services, but one of the things I wanted to talk about was this code enforcement. We were talking about, after the meeting with the North End groups, the Cathedral and Terrace Park groups, about taking a look at some ordinances that help them out up there. And I think code enforcement would go along with that. And weren't we speaking about moving some of that to, I show that code enforcement is down under public services, but wasn't the issue with the 2 North End groups, weren't we going to transfer that over to like the fiscal committee? That issue?
We did talk about that.
We did talk about that. And I thought we were talking about moving it. And if we were going to do that, I was going to suggest that code enforcement be moved with that, because I think that those two will combine together once we start the discussion on that.
So you want the code enforcement and the noise?
No, it'll be just the code enforcement slid over and combined with the issues that were presented in that meeting that we had with the North End community groups. I think that those two would go hand in hand.
Well, I think code enforcement was probably the biggest thing that we had that night, Kenny. And some folks wanted to look at some ordinances, and we heard about the ordinance in Brookings, and we heard about an ordinance over here and over there. And personally, I'm after looking at some of those ordinances, they sound good, and especially the part about declaring something a nuisance property. But after you do that, really, what do you do then? And I've had some discussions with the legal staff here in the City Hall about, what to do and, where can we improve on things like that. And without committing anybody too much, why there was some discussions that we had about looking at ways of shortening the time frame, that once somebody gets a fine, and they're brought to that point, maybe we could, shorten what is called the due process without completely getting rid of it, because obviously, you need to have somebody look at it. Just because somebody makes an accusation does not make you guilty of it. But shortening the time frame and the appeals process and a few things like that there. I have not had a chance to talk with Mr. Amundsen since then, and I thought he was going to get a hold of Mr. Cooper, and they were going to talk about a few of these things, and I have, like I say, I haven't had a chance to follow up on that. But I'm not sure if adding some new ordinances is going to be the key to that situation or not. It seems to me we have some pretty good ordinances on the books right now, but the trouble is getting them enforced in a timely fashion. And I think that seemed to me that night to be the source of a lot of the aggravation down there. And maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Anderson.
And now that we talk about it a little bit, I think what we slid over was the topic of rental registration. And I know that fits right in along with that code ordinance topic, but because I haven't been at all the Public Service Committee meetings, but is code ordinance, it's been a topic there in the past. Is there any?
I think that you're right. I think you're right, Pat. I think that it was the rental registration we were moving to fiscal committee.
Yeah.
That sounds right. I do have one of the things that in code enforcement and public services I was going to talk about today. We have 5 recommendations that came from internal audit that we've never done anything with. So I wanted to review those with the committee today to see how we wanted to proceed on those. So that was part of our agenda in public services today.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, how do we want to? Should we go ahead and see what comes out of the Public Service Committee this afternoon, and you can discuss that? And Councilor Bennick is not here, but we can certainly, if it's. I know the Public Service Committee is certainly dealing with a lot of different issues, and if you'd like to shed that one topic, I'm sure we could probably find a home for it.
Let's proceed with it today, because I believe Mike is planning to be there, and then I visited with Judy Boozman today, and they're the 2 primary directors dealing with code enforcement things. So.
And I plan on attending that as well,
Okay.
So maybe in the course of that meeting, if it's something you want to move over to fiscal, we certainly can, and then, but I think Gerald is still planning on dealing with the rental registration piece of that as well.
That sounds good.
One other item that did come up, we were talking about the public nuisance end of it, and the idea that after a place generated so many police calls in a certain amount of time, that maybe that did qualify it for some special attention, but we weren't sure what that means. If you're a public nuisance, you're a public nuisance, but what does that really mean, and what is the result of it? Where do we take it from there? That was kind of the problem that we had, and after kind of looking at some of the ordinances that are on the books today, that we seem to be just, I wouldn't say unable, but the process just seems to take unbearably long in some cases. I think that's where a lot of folks would like to go with that, and see if we can't work with the legal department and everybody that's involved with the process into, where the real problem's at and where are the real answers at.
And of course, we want to make sure that ultimately the people causing the problems are the ones that have to pay the penalty or be penalized for, and not necessarily a landowner or something else. But
the property owner
all the way around. But
property owners. We can talk about landlords, which puts the onus on people who all have rental property. But there are people out there that own property. That are property owners that are the problem as well.
Absolutely.
So we have to include that. Maybe we should be very careful when we term these things into not saying landlord, but property owners. And sometimes, like I say, the property owner is not the person that's causing the problem, it's the person in there. Which begs the question, do we need rental registration so we can notify the owner when these problems are arising? One thing always leads to another in this business, and this is just one of those intractable things that we're going to have to look hard at.
Ken, does that sound?
That sounds fine to me,
Okay.
yes.
Any other discussion on this topic or any other? Yep.
I have one other thing. Last week, I passed out some handouts to the council, the mayor, of the CVB's listing of tournaments, youth and adults that happened here in Sioux Falls over the last summer. That list showed, by their projections, that about $25 million in sales tax, entertainment tax revenue was generated by these tournaments. With that, I was looking for the council's blessings, I guess, or approval of my travel to Reno, Nevada, in the be November 6th through the 11th for the ASA National Convention and Conference. To me, that would be an educational process to learn how to have Sioux Falls bid for national adult tournaments also here in Sioux Falls. Our Sioux Falls People for Youth does a great job on youth events, but they do not want to bid for adult events, but they will mentor us in this process. And also, as the city continues to bid for these type of tournaments and everything, it's become more and more competitive. And also, I would be going to show the city's support for the actions of Sioux Falls People for Youth and the other groups that are working on doing this. Once again, the educational part would be learning how to bid for national adult tournaments to be held here in Sioux Falls. And I foresee, as I've said before, that Sioux Falls should be able to hold 2, maybe even 3 of these type of tournaments every year. And that's what I'm asking to get the approval from the council for.
Councilor Knudsen?
Well, just to start the conversation, first of all, I really admire and thank you for your interest in, softball and just other sports events in our city, because I think that's really admirable, and I think the economic benefit is really just probably even more than we'll ever know. So first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for your interest and enthusiasm, very sincere enthusiasm. Again, speaking as just one city councilor, is with the difficult financial times, particularly that our city is facing right now, I think it's a bit questionable for city councilors to spend taxpayers' money to go off on those kinds of trips, even though the intentions are extremely honorable on your part. I do, as you well know, and you know this as well as I do, is the city actually spends lots of money, good money, I think, with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So I feel like that they can represent our city very well. In addition to that, we have a Sioux Falls Sports Authority that goes after some of these kinds of events too. But even if we weren't in as difficult a time as we are, I'm not certain that using taxpayers' money for city councilors to go off to lure events here is a good idea. But anyway, that's just comes from the heart.
And I do appreciate that, Dee. I'm just also following a little tradition that was started by my father, who actually went to an event with the CVB and Parks Department to actually start getting these events here in Sioux Falls. And once again, I respectfully say, with as competitive as these are getting, we have to show more and more. The Sports Authority does not go after these type of events. They're looking at the larger events. They don't go after youth. They don't support for the youth. It's not against them, but it's not in their business model. When I've spoken with the CVB on this, they were extremely supported and very excited to have me coming along with them. And once again, I feel that the cost of this is negated by as the amount of revenue that these type of tournaments can bring into Sioux Falls. I stated this before Harmadon was built. I stated this to the city council. I fought for Harmadon getting completed because I stated that when Harmadon was completed, that Sioux Falls would see multiple tournaments, that we would be able to host them. And the very first year the complex was completed, we had the girls 16 and under We had an international men's fast pitch tournament. The ring neck tournament was used for this. And once again, when you're talking revenue of $25 million in one summer, I think that it's something that the city has to look at very hard and be something of a proponent to go out and make sure that we are still acquiring these. Okay, the trip cost would be about $1,100.
Councilor Knudsen?
And just a follow-up, and very respectfully, not at all a debate here, because it's not at all what this is I guess a couple other thoughts. As far as the Conventional Visitors Bureau being really, really enthused about the idea, since the City of Sioux Falls, with taxpayers' money, provides lots of money for them. I guess, another thought would be for if the CVB is, that excited, I mean, would they ever, and I mean this very sincerely, would they ever consider using any of their budget to send a city councilor there? And then a second thought is, I'm still not sure, as far as roles are concerned, if this is a city council role to get involved going to national events like this to try to lure great events here, or does that fall more appropriately with the administration? Those are my additional thoughts on this topic.
I've spoken with the administration. They had no concerns on that. Also, the council does make other trips to informational and networking conferences and things like that that have no economic impact at all to Sioux Falls. So I feel that this, at least I'm going out and trying to do something more. And I feel as a councilman, that's what my job is.
Councilor Litz?
Were you done,
Yes,
Mr.
I'm
Anderson?
sorry.
Very good. Now, were you asking for a travel request? Is that a travel request?
Correct.
That we will take in the chair? Or how do we, this is the first time we've gone through this process, and we've really never discovered or discussed how we were going to handle that. But that being said, let me get in line here. After Kenny, it was brought to my attention today that with our new policy here, the City Council travel request, that I too have a request, and mine is going to be on the 27th and the 28th with an estimated budget of $400. But what it is the South Dakota Housing Annual Conference, the 2009 conference, and I'd like to attend that. Some of the subjects that are going to be out there will be rural housing, playbook in action, feasibility and financing, environmental hazards, mold, asbestos, lead-based paint, contract renewals, meth and property issues, how to develop a successful housing development, disability and reasonable accommodation for animals, and first-time homebuyer program 101. Those will be some of the topics. And in keeping in line with our new policy here, that's my request to this council, that I be allowed to attend this as well.
Okay, maybe we'll just take these issues one at a time. Councilor Jameson, you had the next.
I too, no. I'm just teasing. Actually, Kenny, when did you need approval by, or when is your trip?
The trip is November 6th through the 11th.
So you need to get this approval today, tomorrow? What's your?
That's something that we can discuss over. I think that will have to be approved by yourself and Councilman Jameson, or Councilman Litz, Costello, for approval on that.
How about Bob? When do you need your money?
Mine is on the 27th and the 28th, so suit yourself.
Of October or November?
Pardon me?
October or November?
This month.
Councilor Brown?
Don't we traditionally run these just through the council leadership to approve or disapprove?
We, some time ago, one of the committees, Deborah, if you recall which one was public service, or one of the committees had this as a topic, and we haven't really followed it necessarily the way it was intended by the committee, but I think it was the intent that councilors would bring their travel request to the entire council at an informational. And I don't recall specifically setting up that we were going to vote on it. It was more about, openness and keeping it in front of the public and in full disclosure of everything that we're doing in that arena. So if I might weigh in just on my personal thoughts on travel, we're all elected city officials. And I think we all have a responsibility, certainly to the taxpayers, to the dollars that we expend, but also, there are legitimate reasons for the council to travel. And it's really, in my opinion, up to that individual to determine the legitimacy of their trip. I mean, I'm not sure that I want to stand in the way of Councilor Litz going to a meeting that he feels is particularly important, or Councilor Anderson or Staggers or Jameson or likewise. So I think the important part out is that we're getting this out in the public, and each council member will have to stand on the merits of their trip, and we'll reap the benefits thereof or the repercussions thereof. So that's my personal feeling. The important part is that we have the discussion. I don't know that we need to vote on it. I don't recall that the ordinance, or not the ordinance, but the topic.
Yeah, there actually is no required vote. It was simply to bring it before the council for discussion.
So I think that's what we're doing. Any other comments on Councilor Anderson, Litz, or anybody else's travel?
Well, just to put your minds at ease, I'm going out there and the legislature's not even in session, so I mean, it's going to be a pretty quiet trip, I think, in here.
Okay.
I just want to thank you guys for just even listening. It's just something I really believe in. I believe that this trip will result in Sioux Falls getting a bid for a national tournament, and that Sioux Falls will see national tournaments at least, 1 or 2 every year. And those bring in a lot of revenue dollars and will help out the city.
Any other comments on this topic, or any new topics? If not, I think the public. Oops, I'm sorry, Councilor Jameson.
Maybe just in the follow-up on the travel issue, if we could maybe, if we're going to do this out in open, kind of just this new process, maybe we should start with, how much money we have in the budget for travel, how much we've used, up to date this year. I don't know, just that would help at least Pat and I, for sure, if we were going to make this decision.
And I think that's a good idea going forward, but I think we have plenty of money left in our travel budget. We have not utilized anything close to it, so we should be well suited. Any other comments or items for discussion? If not, we'll adjourn, and a reminder, the public service meets in a few minutes. All are welcome.